Welcome to Turn Talks, the podcast that bridges the gaps between college and career. Join your host, Tina Fox, founder of Turn Mentoring, as she brings together corporate leaders, educators, and university alumni to share practical wisdom and equip you with confidence, clarity, and connection.
Hi, everyone. This is Tina Fox, host of Turn Talks, and we are kicking off today's episode with a very dear friend. Her name is Amy Foy. She is a nurse practitioner by trade, but I know her as a dear friend of nearly 35 years. Amy and I have so much to talk about that there's no way it could be covered in one podcast. I mean, everything from our time in college together as sorority sisters, as moms to 3 boys, as friends, throughout all of our career choices, throughout marriage, etc. We couldn't fit it into one podcast. And so what we decided to do today was try to hone in on the very important concept of, how do you make connections? How do you keep connections regardless of time and distance and changes in life? And I chose Amy because I believe her to be not only the most tenured friend of all of my friends, but she also is the most consistent in my life. And I couldn't think of a better person to kick off Turn Talks with than the one and only Amy Foy. So hi, Amy.
Hi, Tina. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here. And thank you for saying all those sweet things.
Well,
You're my bestie girl.
Yeah, the feeling's mutual. All right. So this is like the number one thing I get asked not the number one thing, but one of the top things I get asked by students when I go and meet with them is, here I am at university and I'm making friends, but then we're all going to scatter to the winds as soon as we graduate from college. And how do you keep in touch with people when you're knee deep in trying to figure out what job you're going to get and you're trying to scrap together 2 nickels in order to pay for rent? And, what do you do when somebody moves away? And so I thought we'd start with like our origin story. So can you take us back to where we went to school and what that was like, not only for you, but then how we ended up meeting?
Well, let's go back a little ways. It was probably 1991 when we met. We both started JMU in 1990, fall of 1990. But I think we met at Rush, or maybe when we got our bids to Sigma Kappa,
Yep.
the fall of 91.
Yes.
And so that was an exciting time. We both took a year to kind of get settled at this big university. And then, we had the opportunity to meet as in the same pledge class of Sigma Kappa. So that was amazing. I think we were with about 50 other girls. Yeah. And I mean, we hit it off from the get-go. One of the greatest things I think that pulls people together is finding something in common. So for sure, we had that in common that we were both going through pledging together. But we quickly learned that we had a lot of other things in common, like coming from a military family and having siblings and being Catholic. And so that just sort of created this evolving connection that we had. And then fast forward a couple years after that, we graduated, went to different cities. You went to Northern Virginia. I went to Richmond. And I think we did a really good job staying in touch and taking road trips and going on excursions together. I can think of a few. Myrtle Beach and Ocean City, New Jersey, and things like that.
I don't think we can tell them where all the bodies are buried because that's to remain on a different podcast. But let's go back to you talking about commonality and how that helped us identify with one another while on campus, which, we didn't know we had those commonalities. We didn't know that both of us were military dependents. Obviously, we knew that we were rushing at the same time, and we ended up in the same, social sorority. But what is it that you think needed to take place for us to discover those commonalities beyond the fact that we were just shoved in the same room together through Rush?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I've actually given this some thought, not only with my friendship with you, but just with the people in general that I develop strong connections with. And I'm going to say with you, it was your likability. You are extremely friendly and smiley and curious. And it felt really good when we started our friendship because you really wanted to learn more about me. And I would say it was probably you who unpacked a lot of those layers that really kind of bonded us stronger. I learned a lot from you. And that's one of my favorite things about my longstanding friendships is really reflecting on what I learned from these amazing people, both men and women, but just what has helped sharpen me as an individual. And so when I think back to those early years, what was really attractive about you was your likability. Just you really visibly liked other people, and it modeled for me how to do that too, and how to smile and how to feel at ease and just starting conversations with people and being able to giggle about things. And yeah, so I don't know if I've ever actually said that to you, but it is one of my favorite things about you.
Well, I so much appreciate that. Now, listen, so being that we're both military dependents, I do think that I moved around a little bit more than you might have moved around based on what I know about your dad's history in the military and where you guys lived. And so that was definitely one of those things that I think I had to learn how to be authentically curious because I was picking up and moving every 6 months to 3 years. But that being said, and you have lots of different friends. You have people like me who's more extroverted, ambivert, however you want to describe me. But then there are also people that we both know and cherish that are introverts. So for anybody who's an introvert, it's like, well, I'm not going to be the smiley person who's going to be super outgoing and racing into a crowd to say, hi, what are you all about? What kinds of things would you talk to, students these days or anybody who may be a bit more introverted? And then tell us a little bit about your introverted friends, if you've got any that are top of mind.
hmm Yeah, so I think I'm actually in the middle. I'm a little bit extroverted and a little bit introverted. And so I can really appreciate this question. I think so while I explained you were very outgoing and curious and asked a lot of great questions, what I have learned about the strength of an introvert is that they have a gift of being really good active listeners. And so while they can make themselves available when they have the energy and the battery life to kind of do that. But when someone seeks them out and engages in conversation or asks some of these questions, they can learn the ping pong strategy of giving a comment back. But most importantly, people love to tell their story. So an introvert tends to be a really good active listener. They just like you're doing, you're nodding your head, you're making good eye contact, you're validating that you're being heard. And so if you are uncomfortable sort of putting yourself out there and initiating conversation, you may be able to find your area of shining by just being present and available and making the eye contact and doing the nonverbals of validation or asking an open-ended question that just puts the ball in their court, and then they can go to town and tell you all about themselves.
Well, and that's one of my favorite aspects of you too, is whereas sometimes I'm very keen to want to tell a story, you're even more keen to listen to the story. And that validation of feeling heard, I think, is what makes for really great friendships when it needs to happen, right? But then also taking the pause and being able to listen. So that kind of leads me to this thought of, all right, so we had all these years together, albeit not necessarily 4 years in college because we didn't rush till sophomore year. Missed a year, darn it. Wish I would have done it freshman year had I known how much fun that would have been. But then we ended up doing these years together. We were also involved in other things at school that may not have been sorority related. I know for sure you were involved in nursing. You had a lot of things going on with your clinicals. So describe for me what else were you involved in at JMU when you were a student?
So my freshman year, I was actually on an an Army ROTC scholarship.
Oh,
So
how did I forget?
this is this is something we have in common, but had very different experiences. So While I took the ROTC path, which I wouldn't change a thing because I was just so enlightened to that experience and took such appreciation for those who serve our country. It was right at the start of Operation Desert Storm, and so I was able to really learn from our leaders within our organization what was happening, learning about the military science. I'm the last of four, so really, I didn't have much awareness or understanding of my dad's role in the military because he retired when I was 8. He had
Mm,
already served 22 years at that point. And so this was a really neat opportunity for me freshman year to learn more about that. And so I was busy with that my freshman year. We ended up having that in common because you chose to take ROTC lab. I think it was maybe your senior year.
terrible idea on my part. Terrible.
Which I had great admiration for because I actually withdrew after the first year. It was something that I wasn't sure I was ready to commit. But anyway, so I was busy with that. And then the rest of my years, I was actually really busy with nursing. And I worked a little bit part time at the university. And I just really enjoyed exploring all the different parts of JMU, the outdoors, the indoors, just being social with sorority sisters. And I think my one regret or my one wish that I had gotten more involved in is my faith path. Like I do remember going to church with you a couple times, but it just wasn't on the forefront of my mind at that time. Now, God had a plan and how it all played out, and it's all good. But I do reflect back and wish that that had been a little bit more present in my college experience.
Agreed. I agree wholeheartedly. There was a lot of other distractions that we had on the books, but we did make it a few times here and there. I know CCM was happy to invite us. Just so that you all know, Amy and I are recording this on Veterans Day. So being that we are military dependents, happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there. We so appreciate everything you've done, everything you continue to do. We living that life know full well as to all the sacrifices that are being made. So thank you to all of our vets today. Happy Veterans Day. So I made the terrible decision to do ROTC. You made the wise decision to start with that. And I say terrible only because I am not very good at ROTC. So they definitely did not want me as part of the military. I think they were very happy to have me as a dependent.
We were both good comic relief.
Yes, yes. They were
I
like,
think they
get
called me Private Benjamin. And all of you young
exactly.
listeners, you probably have no idea who that is, but
Let's just say a lot of lipstick, a lot of forehead hair that, you didn't want your bangs to go underneath the cap. And so that was a problem. That was a problem for us. Okay. So let's talk about what stayed constant and what evolved as far as keeping those friendships going. We're on campus, we're finding commonality through the fact that we're involved in the same thing. I think that makes it easy, right? That makes it easier when people are either part of a project, part of a team, part of a workplace, part of a group. It makes it easier. But you said at the beginning, we split up after college, right? I was the one that decided to go to Northern Virginia. So many of our friend group decided to reside in Richmond. We were a couple hours apart. So now all of a sudden we weren't in each other's daily lives. What do you think stayed constant, but then what evolved in that separation?
hmm um, I think what stayed constant was our desire to stay in touch. Back then we didn't have cell phones, so it was sort of these, just random opportunities. We'd shoot a phone call, and hopefully you'd pick up, and we'd chat for an hour, maybe two. We'd laugh, we'd cry. I mean, we were really seeing each other through these milestones of post college, which are some of my favorite years because you're finally in the big world and you're making some money, you're making independent decisions, and some of that can feel really scary and it can feel really exciting. So it was nice to have a group of girlfriends to be able to share that with and be able to kind of seek some guidance or advice. Maybe they had some experience before you in renting an apartment and what does that look like? And so there was a lot of kind of just seeking ideas or validation or advice from our friend group. So I would say that helped really solidify our friendship. We we really liked to see each other, so we would plan Christmas events, right? I mean, we'd plan our annual Christmas party. We'd try to get together over the summer, and you would invite me to Lake Anna with your family. I mean, there were just a lot of fun opportunities to connect. And whenever we entered into a new relationship, it was really important to sort of get the approval of each other, of the person we were dating. So we may have had one or two of those situations.
Or maybe like when I first started dating a certain someone and decided to bring him down through Richmond, all of you with your little faces smashed against the window, trying not to be obvious and being way too obvious. Yeah, that was good times. Good
Yeah.
times. So you mentioned that, okay, you, unlike me, I ended up in Northern Virginia, and I remember my first salary in that first year was $14,000 a year. I could barely put enough gas in my car. So I was living with my folks. But you and many of our friends did not go home and live with the parents. So talk to us about that living situation, because you had the option if you wanted to. I'm sure you're very close with your folks, but you chose no. They were down in Virginia Beach, Norfolk area, and you decided to go to Richmond. So what was that like, finding friends to live with?
It actually came relatively easily because one of the girls that I was in nursing school with at JMU, she and I both got jobs in Richmond. And so it just worked out well that we would get an apartment together. And I really loved her. We had a great time. After a year of living together, another opportunity opened up with some of our sorority sisters from JMU. And so that took me into the fan. So I lived with a couple other girls there. And, I never thought about going back home. It just wasn't something I desired. I was really excited to be on my own and be independent. And that meant that I pinched pennies, and I really tried to be frugal. I remember the first trip I took with Debbie, my roommate right out of JMU. We went to Cancun, and I didn't grow up with a lot of means. So this was a big deal that I was flying to Mexico with Debbie. And
Mhm.
we didn't do an all inclusive. I don't even know if those existed back then, but we got this hotel room and we literally packed a loaf of bread, peanut butter and jelly, and a box of instant oatmeal so that we could eat in for breakfast and lunch every day, and then we'd splurge for dinner every night.
That's the way to do it.
But it really made that dinner wonderful. Like, we really appreciated it. So I wouldn't change anything. I mean, we definitely pinched pennies, but it allowed us to have the independence, and that felt really good.
So this is the origin, right? This is where Amy and I started. It was in college, and we have remained friends since. But let's get into the work of friendship, because we know that it doesn't, like with any relationship, it doesn't happen without a consistency of work. And I stated earlier that not only are you one of the most tenured friends in my life, but you have remained one of the most consistent. And whether I moved, out of state, I got a new job, whatever it was that I was doing to move myself further away from you, who has stayed very consistent in your placement, at least, I just knew that there was work involved in this friendship. And so give me some of your thoughts on, what you feel people should know about working that friendship, because I would say that it's not just me. I mean, if I lined up a bunch of people that knew the name Amy Foy, that they would all be in 100% agreement that Amy works harder than most people in keeping friendships for the duration. So what advice do you have on the work of friendship?
Wow, that's a really broad question. I guess it would start with, what is the value of the relationship to you and or to me, and is it worth maintaining that commitment and putting in the work? Because you're right, it takes some time. You've got to carve out the time, the energy, listening, sharing, because a friendship is when you feel known and loved. Okay. And so you have to be willing to share and be vulnerable, but you also have to really listen and digest and understand who that person is. So I sort of have this vision of friendships, and it's sort of that concentric circles, right? And so the inner circle is sort of your closest people, like in this stage of life, who it is that you really seek out, really feel comforted by, really feel supported by. And there are other circles outside of them, right? And so depending on the season of life you're in, some of those people may shift in and out a little bit and move out, but then move back in when the support or when that particular person's advice is really needed or valued, or let's be honest, if they have the time to really put into keeping that friendship strong. And so, I enjoy my friendships that I just trust are always there and are able to fluidly move in and out without second guessing that the love is still there and strong. And so I believe you and I have that. We have really been through so many years together and so many milestones together. And so often you've been in that tight little middle circle, right? But there have been times with just the busyness of life or the other stressors that come into play or just the element of time where we've had to move out a little bit, but we always tend to come back in. And so that's a beautiful thing. If you don't talk to somebody for a couple months, you don't even question that they're still your dear friend. And some relationships do exist out there where there are some stipulations or some conditions of that friendship. And my close friends, I don't feel like that exists. So it's just really a nice fluid thing. So I hope that kind
Yeah.
of answers your question. But
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you said the word seasons, and interestingly, a student recently told me, very astute, that she sees friendships in reasons, seasons, and lifers. And I thought, wow, we are really flipping the script on some reverse mentorship here because I love that. I'm always looking for a quip to help keep that kernel in my brain. And so when you said we may not speak to each other for a couple of months, or we're in a different season, and that certainly was the case when we decided to get married and start families, right? So you were ahead of me in the family process. And you've got one son who's out of college, and you've got two sons who are in college. And go Tigers, because we've got two that have gone through Clemson, one that's still in, and then also go Hokies, because we've got one at Virginia Tech. So, so you have already moved through that path. My path was a little bit later than yours. I'm still, a mom of two boys in high school, and the bonus mom of a son who's now 26 and out in the working world. So there were those seasons where you're busy, right? You're busy with work, you're busy with kids, you're busy with a lot of things. And we weren't living in the same location. So I totally agree with you on that. Now, what we do focus on, I would think, you tell me if you disagree, is you and I are less about quantity and we're definitely more about quality. And I think that's where our friendship flourishes, is that despite the time, we'll just pick up where we left off and we'll immediately go into, a quality discussion versus surface level conversations. What do you have to say about like that, or like what we do on purpose?
yeah, 100%. It helps that we have so many years together and that we have a lot of milestones that we've gone through together. Some aches, some pains, some joyful moments, some achievements. That experience we have together makes those reunions really special and allows us to jump right in. I think we also have a long history of honesty with each other,
Mm.
and which that's hard to come by. And good or bad, like I think we've always tried to be honest with one another. You are someone who has sharpened me in really good ways and given me
Is it
feedback.
because I was sharp? Like I was like, I don't like those shoes on you. Stop wearing.
I was going to say some of it was fashion, but I mean, we're all naive when we're young. And so, getting some honest, you describe me as a mirror sometimes. And I think sometimes it helps to reflect back to the people you love what you're seeing and just have some honest discussions about that. And so that has been a really special part of our friendship.
Well, I'm going to touch on that about the honesty part because I do think that when people are trying to describe friendship, they think of just the uplifting, easygoing, everybody's laughing. But if you've been friends as long as we have, there are moments that are very hard. There are moments that are very painful. And we have to be very discerning if we're good friends to one another in the let's go versus let go scenario. And so choosing wisely, knowing when to let something go, knowing when to talk to somebody about, hey, this is a hard truth that I need to deal with you on. And I know that you and I have gotten together and we've had one-on-ones where it's like, hey, this is the thing that's bothering me. I need you to hear me on this. And then I kind of need you to respond back to me about, what were your thoughts during that time? And even though it was hard for us to go through that, I felt as though you mentioned sharpened. I felt as though it made us so much deeper in our commitment to one another. Whereas I felt coming out of those conversations, the difficult conversations, that I can talk to her about anything and we're going to survive it. We're going to figure out why we became friends in the first place and we're going to be honest with one another. And that feedback to me has been of tremendous importance. I remember I'm not going to tell the whole story, but I remember being in Fort Lauderdale and I was down there, I was single, and I was just feeling so lonely and so depressed. And I remember you had the three boys and it was crazy chaos in your house. And I had picked up the phone to call you and I was very sobby. And, you were so great on the telephone. But as I'm feeling sorry for myself, I'll never forget you saying, okay, listen. And then you held the phone out to your insanity of the house. And you said, you hear all these kids right now, you hear them screaming. You said, that's going to be your life at some point in time. So enjoy this peace and quiet that you have right now. It's not lonely. You're doing great. And it just set me right. And I was like, only from Amy's, voice
Mhm.
could I have heard that nugget of truth. And I'm just very grateful for all of those truths that you've given to me. So what would you tell people about that discernment about what are some red flags to you? What are some green flags to you when looking at, who's the season or the lifer, right? As that student said. What are some of those things that you look for?
Yeah, I think me personally, and we're all different. So I'm sort of a deeply feeling person. I like to dive in with people. And so I try to get a read, not in the first encounter, but in the first few encounters. Is this somebody I can dive in with a little bit? I enjoy deeper conversations. I enjoy dialogue that just is more than surface level. And so when you have years of experience with these people that you can dive in with a little bit deeper, you get some exposure of their heart and their value system. And I think that is that's a good indicator of, is this a lifer? you know, if they're willing to sort of open up a little bit and share, and you don't have to share anything, deep or tragic, but just again, maybe going back to the active listening and sort of ping ponging some of those questions back and just getting to know somebody a little bit deeper. But we probably can both think about some people who are in our lives that we've known for a very long time. Yet, even though we've known them for a long time, we don't really know them any better than we did
Mm,
in the first year that we knew them. And that's fine. That's in that concentric circles, they're in there, but you're not going to pull them into that inner circle as much. So I'm a big kind of assess the heart person, and for kind of determining, is this one of my lifers? Somebody I can really trust and know that with them, I become a better person, and that what I can add to their light helps build them up. One of my favorite things about our relationship and even our group of girlfriends is that we can tease each other in such a loving way. I mean, we know our tender spots too, and we don't go there, but we can tease each other in such a loving way that allows us to just laugh at ourselves and just embrace the silly idiosyncrasies that we have that make us unique. that's a really special bond to have. So I think when you're able to do that with somebody and they don't take offense or push away, that's an open door for a potential lifer. you know,
Yeah.
if you know that your heart's in the right place.
Well, and so, what's interesting about that is I'm thinking as soon as you said our group of friends. So, for the audience, we're very fortunate that we found small groups of friends in school. And then I don't even know how it started. How did the whole girls' weekend thing start? And
I'll
what
tell you exactly how it started.
Okay, I was gonna say somebody needs to jog my memory on this. And not only how did it start, but let's talk about Girls Weekend because I post about it every year because we've done it for a long time now. So by the way, so not only how did it start, you have to remind me what year is this? I think there's a lot of debate on what year this is.
Mhm.
And then I'm really interested in sharing like why we do this and what comes about spending those 4 days together with one another. Okay, so yeah, jog my memory. How did this whole thing happen?
So I had my second child, Trevor. He was about 9 months old, and I was in the throes of having two under two, and I was so desperate to just have some time with my girlfriend. And I was all in as a mom. Like I loved being a mom. I knew what I was signing up for. I embraced it, but it was exhausting. And so I just got an itch and I said, I'm going to get us a house at the Outer Banks. Who's in? And before you know it, all 11 of us were in. And so that started this annual tradition. And so, people would come, they'd be pregnant. People would come, they'd be, pumping their breast milk. People would make sure their husbands took care of the babies at home. And the boys, those that lived in the same area would get together and kind of hang out. So it kind of became this really cool. It's funny. I was using this term this weekend called framily. It's a blend of your friends and your family, but it sort of evolved this family of a community of all of us, right? Like we just so deeply wanted to be together. I don't think we stopped talking for 72 hours. We haven't stopped. It's been great.
What year was that? How many years have we been doing this
It
now?
was 20 years ago. This was the
So
20th year.
we had the 20th year this year. See, I'm so terrible about those numbers. Okay,
Yeah.
so 20 years of doing this. Now, 20 years, and we've talked about this. Sometimes you're like, oh man, I just got so many things going on. I don't know if I can take 3 to 4 days and go to wherever it is that we're planning on going. So, what makes you go to this every single year?
So this is this
And
is
be honest. Be honest.
no, I have this little saying that I use. I don't know if I've shared it with you. It's like my 3 COM. So
Oh,
commitment, communication, and community. And so those are like three really important things for me in my relationships and just in maintaining wellness and life. And so part of it is the commitment. I may not be in the best place to put everything aside and go away for 3 days, but I am committed to this group of girlfriends and I never have a regret. I mean, I'm just always so glad to get there. And really, I don't think there's ever been a year that I didn't want to be there. It may have felt like a stressor and a little bit inconvenient, but I always wanted to be there. So my commitment to my friends, the communication piece, just all the sharing, all the talking, all the laughing. I mean, we giggle and giggle and giggle and we cry and we, have quiet time too. And we take walks and have coffee and all of that. But all of that communication is so fantastic. And then the community piece of just like really feeling a part of our group. I mean, there's something very special and sacred about that.
I love it. I'm the same way. I mean, there are times where, I'm tired and I'm thinking, oh, I got to pack. And if I'm maybe not in the best place in my life, and I'm thinking I have to show up for this event with these wonderful women, I don't want to bring them down. Right. And so I've had those times where I've said to myself, should I really go? Would I be a burden to this group of women by my presence being there? And what happens if I don't laugh as much as I normally do? Or what happens if I just kind of stay quiet? Are they going to question what's going on. And maybe I don't want to talk about it right then and there because it's the wrong setting. And I want an upbeat thing. So I love the fact, no, you've never shared that with me, the 3 C's, the commitment, communication, and community. But I have never regretted going and showing up. I've never regretted that because of what you said, that it ends up being less about me and it ends up being more about the community that I'm with. And just being able to be there to listen and just to laugh with each other, at each other, is one of the most amazing things that I have been blessed with in my entire life. And that we
I
can't
just
say
had
everything.
a flurry of visions going through my head.
No, I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, cool, tamper that down. Tamper that down.
Well, I
So
can see for you, Tina, being an extrovert, how if you're not in the headspace to sort of be there to be you and to be on, because you're such a dynamic personality. I imagine that might feel uncomfortable, right? And, but all of these years, there's something really comforting about knowing. And I think, one of our girls in our group recently renamed us. We've had a few names along, but
I
she
understand.
said, we're the Kayas, come as you are. And that was so comforting to just know we got you. You come in whatever headspace, whatever physical condition you are, you come and we've got you. And I love that.
I do too. So are we officially called the Kayas now?
Yes, it just depends on the day and who's
Okay.
writing the text thread. But yes, we are
Okay.
that. We have a lot of nicknames.
Okay. So let's move into two like little touchy areas. One is tech. So we are Gen X, and behind Gen X is millennials, and then of course Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And as we move into the younger generations, we see more reliance on this wonderful thing called technology that can really open up lots of different worlds and connect people in new ways that we never knew. Because if you weren't standing right in front of me, I wasn't picking up the phone to make a long distance call at $3 a minute, right? So where does tech stand in supporting long-term relationships with people or even creating? I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some positives to it, right? I mean, if you can't physically be together, you can certainly FaceTime and see each other's face. I mean, there's something very valuable about seeing facial expressions and being able to hear voice. I'd much rather FaceTime than text because a lot can get lost in translation of a text.
So true.
And so, on that note, I think it can be really helpful. I mean, we all saw it in COVID. We would do our group chats and talks and that was lovely. So, I just think self-awareness, we have to kind of really improve our self-awareness of, recognizing, are these relationships that we're maintaining via text or, whatever, Snap, whatever you use, do they feel authentic? Do they feel like we're able to dive deeper? Do they feel like we're unpacking each other and understanding each other better? Because there's a lot out there we can share that's really funny, or these great little videos that we share and they keep us laughing, but it doesn't allow us to really dive in deep and bond. So I'm a big experience person, so the physical kind of connection sinks into my memory and my heart much deeper than a virtual thread. So yeah,
Well,
I think we're all individual.
what would you say to people, particularly students, who, are just having a hard time in making friends, but they are online a lot? What advice would you have for them to do something a little bit different to create those connections?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it boils down to what your desires are. If you feel lonely and you feel like you desire more connection with people, you're going to have to be brave and you're going to have to do some things that feel uncomfortable. And I'm talking about the person who feels most comfortable behind a screen, communicating through technology. It may feel uncomfortable to make an effort to engage socially and physically. And so there are some really great strategies and to use, but you have to seek practice opportunities. So I work in the mental health field, and so I work with a lot of young people with social anxiety, and it's challenging. It's really hard. I mean, their whole fight or flight gets triggered with the thought of entering a scene where they don't know a lot of people, and that can feel physically uncomfortable and emotionally uncomfortable, but physically. And so you really have to start just taking little baby steps to practice eye contact, practice keeping your phone away so you do engage, so that you are available to and interact with people. But yeah, I think it's an important skill. But if you're not lonely and you're completely happy, doing the virtual, then there may not be a need for it. But loneliness is painful, and it activates some of the same brain centers as physical pain. So while we may not feel physical pain, our brain is sensing pain, and that can be really uncomfortable for people. So setting some small goals to really get out there and socially engage. And, you might wonder, well, where do I even start? So, it could be in your neighborhood. It could be at the YMCA. It could be going to church, joining a running club, something like that. Just something to kind of get you connecting with others and finding that thing that you might have in common.
I'm so grateful for the fact that you do have this mental health background, because certainly as a mom raising young boys in the age of tech, no guidebook as to, well, what am I supposed to be doing with this? I know I've picked up the phone and called you so many times on, hey, what's the latest data that you're seeing? What are some of the things when you go to conferences that they're starting to talk about? So I'm just curious, since you put it out there that this is your background and this is something that you do. Is there anything off the top of your mind that right now is like a hot button in the space of mental health as it pertains to teens, college-aged individuals? I mean, maybe it goes all the way up to, late adulthood, but I'm just curious as to what do we need to know today?
Oh, that's a big question.
I know. I was going to say, pick one, pick one. I
Well,
didn't know
I
where
think
to.
I think you just touched on it,
Mm.
and how technology is sort of replacing some of that, human engagement. I mean, I believe we were created to be relational beings. And so, when we replace the human interaction and the building of empathy and our opportunity to build our EQ,
Mm.
we're depleted. We're deficient in skills. And that doesn't feel good. It can feel uncomfortable. It can create some anxiety for people. So, the more we can model for our young people, and I'm talking about our generation and even the younger parents, the more we can model for our young people that the phone doesn't have to be in our hands all the time, almost like create a little 10-minute slot every hour where you do pick it up and look at it, because it's a distraction. It's sort of sending a message that I have other more important things to take care of besides you. And that might
Mm.
be our children, that might be our friends. And, it gives us a dopamine hit when we get a buzz on our phone or when we see something funny or we're on Instagram. I mean, these people who create these algorithms, they're pretty brilliant. They know what they're doing. And they keep us coming back. So you have to be intentional, and just like anything, I mean, we've heard it since we were kids, right? Everything in moderation. Don't eat all the cupcakes because you're not going to be able to eat dinner, and just whatever it is, everything in moderation. So that applies to the technology too, I think.
That's great. You just made me think. I recently went and toured 6 different college campuses, and I was talking to my kids about how I'm trying to figure out the body language of folks that have AirPods or, over the ear headsets in. Are they still willing to engage? Because I said, people that are of an older generation may look at people that have, something covering their ears or in their ears as, I'm not currently available to engage. And so I would tend to shy away from talking to those people because I'm thinking, oh, they're listening to a podcast, they're on an important call, they don't want to be bothered right now. And my older son, he says to me, he was like, no, mom, he's like, you got to look at the rest of their body language. And then he took me around one of the campuses and he said, okay, like that kid, you can go talk to that kid. And I said, why? And he said, because the heads up, even though, and they only have one AirPod in, not two. And I'm sitting there going, wow, this is like a whole nother language. He's like, yeah, that kid's totally ready to engage. And I was like, I would have not thought that way.
Would not have known.
Right? And
Interesting.
he's like the ones, I said, well, when are they not ready to engage? And he says, definitely both ears covered, hoodie up, head down, looking at the phone. And I said, I just look at that as dangerous. But he was like, no, they're definitely not ready to engage. So lots of communication things when it comes to the different generations. So I'm getting ready to close out here, but I'm curious as to, you've got two kids still in college. You've got one who has successfully transferred out and is now a part of the regular world. How do you talk to the fact that you have lots of different groups of friends? So I know we talked about the group of friends that you and I tend to hang out within, but both of us, we don't live in the same town. We participate in lots of different things. So therefore, we have lots of different groups of friends. And folks are always wondering, well, how do you mix those friends? Or do you mix those friends? Or do you ever talk about the fact that you do things with other people? Does that make people jealous? So just for those, that have asked me, how does that work when you have many different groups of friends? What say you?
Well, I honestly, I think my mom modeled for me how to do that. She was just a very friendly, hospitable person, and maybe I got that from her, but I don't know. I almost see it as a little bit of a mission when I'm in a group where some different circles of friends are there. I really want to connect them. So I might say, hey, Tina, let me introduce you to so-and-so because she's got, a child at JMU and you need to tell her about your experience there. I might try to find a commonality between two people so that they can start a conversation. And, we're all individual, but I tend to be really aware of, other people's experiences that I'm with. So if I am in a group and I see someone sort of falling away from the group or getting quiet, or maybe they're looking at their phone, I might gently try to pull them in, hey, what do you think about this? Or let me show you this. I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable, I think, when people aren't comfortable. So maybe that's a little bit of my mission. And we're all different, right? So some people don't get uncomfortable in those situations, but I do. So I think I try to just make everyone feel at home and feel comfortable. And, I do have a lot of little circles just in things that I'm involved in, but it makes me really happy when they can blend and people meet new people and then their circle gets bigger. And that just feels really good.
I love that. And it's so true. And maybe that's the through line in you being a nurse is that you don't want people in discomfort. You're always caring for others. So that's not lost on me at all. So for our audience, I just want everybody to know who you are because you are such a special person to me. Amy Foy is not only a dear friend, she is a nurse practitioner. She works in the field of mental health these days. She's a Turn mentoring mentor, and we've had many students who have been lucky to call her their mentor. I know she's said she's very lucky to be a mentor to many students because like me, she's always an avid person who wants to learn. And so we learn a lot from these younger generations as well. If you are inspired by today's podcast, then maybe you can, reach out to someone that you haven't talked to in a long time and make that connection because you never know when you're going to make a long lasting friendship. And little did I know almost 35 years ago that one conversation and just meeting this other military dependent who happened to be in the same group as me that day would turn into a lifelong of stories and so much fun and laughter. And I just want to say to Amy, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. We like to be physically in the same presence, so I'll have to call you for a walk at some point in time in these beautiful winter mornings. But it was great to see you on today's podcast. And I love you to death. And thank you so much for being such a joy and such a friend to me for all these years.
Well, it's truly my pleasure, Tina. I love you so much. Thank you for inviting me.
All right. We'll see you next time on Turn Talks, where we'll be meeting with not only alumni from different universities, but also university leaders. And we'll be working with students, giving you their perspective on a number of different topics. We hope that you enjoy today's topic and discussion, and we will see you soon.
Thank you for listening to Turn Talks. To learn more about our robust mentoring platform, visit us at turnmentoring.com. Join us next time for more enlightening conversations.